call this meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please read the statement in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act?
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting of the Council was provided by transmitting a copy of the meeting notice to the Madison Eagle and Daily Record, posting a copy on the bulletin board at the main entrance of Bailey Allard, and filing a copy in the office of the clerk, all on January 6th. Notice of change in time from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. was provided in the same manner, all on January 30th. These notices were made available to members of the general public.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Holden.
Here.
Ms. Bailey. Here. Mr. Elias.
Here.
Mr. Conley.
Here.
Mrs. Zuccomoto.
Here.
Dr. Esposito.
Here.
Mr. Dunham.
Here.
Just going to review the agenda, and I'd like to add that just before we adjourn, Mr. Dunham, if you would move that we could go into executive session to discuss 2 potential contracts.
I will, Mayor.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything else for the agenda this evening? Okay. Mr. Kalafut, you're on.
I'll just give a very, very brief overview of what we have here. If you look at page 3 of 4.
Robert, before we start, can I just maybe do 30 seconds for the audience? That tonight what we're doing is not an actual appropriation of dollars, and what we're looking at, and the governing body is looking at, is a list of what we would consider essential projects. These are not wish lists. This is projects that have been deemed by the various department heads to be essential projects. The goal tonight is to try to, within the context of all those essential projects, establish the priorities of those projects, and then try to establish for this calendar year related to those projects what an appropriate dollar investment would be for those projects moving forward. And then also in that package that you have with you are 4 pots of money that fund these projects that are on this list. One is the water capital, which comes from sale of the water product to our customers and the funds generated. One is the electric capital project that comes from the sale of the electricity, operation of the electric utility. One is the open space trust fund, which comes from the 2 cents per $100 of value that you pay on your local tax bill. And the last is the general capital improvement fund, which is I would call it a common pot that's generated in a couple of ways, one of which is through the tax bill that you pay annually. $500,000 per year is generated through the collection of property taxes that goes into that pot. In addition, for example, we sold in the not too distant past the health building for $1 million. Rather than to insert that revenue into the operating budget, because it's a non-recurring revenue that you can't rely on, instead of doing that and artificially reduce taxes in 1 year and then not have the money there the next year, asset sales such as that go into the general capital improvement project, general capital improvement fund. So what you have in your package is a summary of those 4 pots with the amount that's available and the master list of what we consider to be essential projects for the governing body to discuss. And we, after Robert finishes, we'll be introducing the engineer to talk about those projects and work our way down the list. And obviously, we invite your comments at the end of the meeting. Sorry, Robert.
Well done. Thank you, Mayor. On page 3 of 4, as you can see, addressing the general capital, which affects the municipal spending, you can see there's $7.6 million requested. Recommended is $2.4 million, but this $2.4 million is a little bit of a hybrid this year. Embedded in that $2.4 million is $850,000, which is reflected on page 1 of unfunded, previously approved ordinances from 2007 and 2008. I have discussed this with you briefly in the past. We amended ordinance 47, 2008 and 51, 2007 to increase those road improvement projects by $850,000. The $850,000 because of the timing of it with a bond issue in order to award the contracts, was not included in the $26.3 million bond sale that was conducted in October. We couldn't include it in the bond sale because the ordinances were not yet legally adopted. So therefore, it's unfunded, and I'm asking that we place that $850,000 in that $2.4 million. So it's really $1.6 million of new spending.
New projects. And new projects.
Pardon me?
And new projects.
That is correct, of new. And excluded from that $2.4 million are projects that you will discuss this evening. Listed on page 2 is $900,000 of recreation projects. And on top of page 3, $250,000 for civic center projects. So they would be in addition to the $2.4 million, of which, once again, of the $2.4 million, 1.6 is new projects. 850,000 are old projects. And
Robert, just for clarification, because we've spoken about this, you and I previously, is there, in addition to what's on this budget, carryover projects from last year that are still being performed?
Yes.
And if so, what's the dollar value of that?
It's approximately $3 million in round numbers of 2008 road projects that still have to be done, and about $1.5 million of storm water improvements, about $3 million. On page 4 of 4, you can see the water capital request of $1.4 million. That would pretty much exhaust our capital resources. We're recommending $815,000, which is really consistent with what we've done in 2005, 2007, 2008, where we're investing significant financial resources in the water utility infrastructure. And this is all done with available resources. There's no bonding here. We have, my financial plans do not include bonding for the water or electric utility going forward. And you can see there's $402,000 of projects requested and recommended in the electric utility. The last 2 pages are the as requested. Governing body always wants to see this. I've made some adjustments here. We ended the year with general capital improvement fund and fund balance of almost $4.9 million. I am reducing that by the $850,000 for the previously approved ordinances, the amendments to ordinances 47, 2008, and 51, 2007. Year to date, the council has adopted ordinances 3, 2009 and 7, 2009 for $135,000. I'm reducing that, and I'm adding the budget transfer of $500,000 for the 2009. So there are available funds of $4.4 million. There has been no action taken on any projects in the electric utility, and there is no transfers, as you know, from the 2009 into the electric utility capital fund. Once again, we have discussed this, but for the benefit of the audience, we have not raised any capital funds through the utility operating budget in about 8 or 9 years, and the reason for that is during the 1990s we built up a very, very sufficient flow of resources through appropriating funds for a potential second line feeder to James Park substation, of which we did not do. So we ended 2001 with about $3.5 million, and simultaneously we were beginning the very expensive Allegheny purchase power contract, so I stopped raising those funds. We're getting to a point where we'll most likely have to replenish some of that.